wir sind Dedalic, das gut.
We're Dedalic. It's common courtesy we don't just generate our maps randomly.
Das Schönste, was es im
The most gorgeous thing in Blackguards are the characters. They've turned out so good, and after 2.5 years of development, you really grow fond of them.
Wir wollen es nicht unbedingt.
Our intent is not to make the game overly difficult for the players, but we want it to be a challenge. Dark, mature, and in 3D. With their turn-based RPG, Blackguards Dedalic Entertainment is treading new ground. It is only fitting that we didn't meet with senior producer Kai Fiebig and his team in their studios, but rather in the tenebrous dungeons beneath, which are exclusively reserved for this project. Practices like these are unpleasant but necessary. Creating an RPG always comes with a lot more of blood, sweat, and tears than an adventure. We love telling stories, and the RPG was always the adventure genre's neighbor, so we can go all out on storytelling, which is one of our strong points. And this is basically the reason why we decided to go for an RPG. Blackguards takes place in the universe of Europe's most successful pen and paper role-playing game, The Dark Eye. In contrast to all the soft predecessors, though, we take off the white gloves. You won't get to play a paragon hero with this one. What's special about Blackguards is that it really encourages players to consider what problems the dark side deals with. First of all, we chose a cast of criminals because we decisively wanted to stray from that goody two-shoes image. And secondly, this adds much more layers. You can tell much more in regards of narrative about an edgy evil character than you tell about flawless good characters.
The appeal of playing a scoundrel in Blackguards is basically your moral flexibility. You don't have to play by the rules, but breaking them may have consequences. Don't break anything. You may even poison your acquaintances occasionally, in the game, of course.
Yes, we ultimately went for criminals, since you've already seen the virtuous heroes saving the princess a lot of times. There's some point where you get tired of being the hero. We don't have hardcore felons here, however. They're not loathsome. They're rogues. Deep, damaged characters, basically. I see them the way I'd see a character of an ongoing pen and paper campaign. At some point, there are moral conflicts, and you decide what's best for your hero. And rarely you get out of this with a clean record. Also, considering the area where the game takes place, it would be quite unrealistic for overly moral people to roam this place. We just wanted to turn things upside down. We said we wanted interesting characters, polarizing, with a good deal of grit. Often the bad guys are more relatable, often even more likable than your goody two-shoes hero. For the game designers Martin Wilkes and Florian Pett, as well as the game's writer Tilman Schanen, credible characters are the backbone of every story. And in Aventura's rough south, only tough individuals will get by. The most gorgeous thing in Blackguards, Tilman, thanks man, are the characters. They've turned out so good. And after 2.5 years of development, you really grow fond of them. And I really regret one or the other decision we made along the way. Players will see what I mean in time.
Was Blackguards besonders macht, ist, denke ich, einmal die großartige Story.
What makes Blackguards so special, in my opinion, are the brilliant story, the cutting-edge dialogues, the deep characters, their personal struggle.
Die persönlichen Abgründe, einfach der Wahnsinn. Ich glaube, das ist uns wirklich gelungen, ein taktisch sehr
It's amazing.
tiefes Spiel zu machen.
I think we really succeeded in creating a strategy game with a lot of depth to it. Sure, there are some more relaxed maps in between, where you can just casually slay your way through some enemies. But otherwise, we definitely fought teeth and claw during development to keep that depth. We had this huge pile of skills and spells, and all from the Dark Eyes sourcebooks, and we wanted to keep as much as possible.
Und halt eben diese interaktiven Möglichkeiten in den Maps halt. Die
Interactive
Umgebung
map
und so
objects,
vorteilen.
the environment you can use to your advantage during battles.
Halt wahnsinnig viel
All this offers an insane variety of options to solve the problems we present the player with, and to win battles.
unzählige Möglichkeiten einfach.
There are countless possibilities,
Das ist halt was, wo
and I hope this is a thing that will get players talking to each other.
wo sich Spieler austauschen.
In that one map, I lured them into the swamp and then set fire to the swamp gas.
Das entflammen, dass sich
Meta stories to the bigger plot, if you want.
der großen Geschichte.
Apart from the story, where the player character has to ally with shady characters like Noram the Dwarf and the magician Zuraban to regain freedom, the tactical gameplay is Blackguard's most obvious strong point.
Unser Spiel fühlt sich jetzt schon sehr dynamisch.
Our game has already a very dynamic feel, partly because the battles are not that lengthy.
Kommt eben das Problem auf.
This may cause people to think they're playing a hack and slay, which is, to some degree, similar in terms of pacing and difficulty, especially during the game's beginning.
Manchmal besonders einfach gerade.
The thing is, no, we don't have a hack and slay. We have a strategy game. This is why you, stepped into the breach for the difficulty.
Eingesetzt immer.
Also haben wir natürlich immer wieder Meinungen.
We were always happy about feedback from testers, the Q&A, from the beta test and the forums. What map is too difficult? What's a particularly hard nut to crack?
Beißt ihr euch die Zähne aus? Klar, das ist eine Gratwanderung.
Sure, it's a tightrope walk, but also our job to fine-tune and make players put their best foot forward instead of putting them down hard. Our intent is not to make the game overly difficult for the players, but we want it to be a challenge. We want the player to get their aha moment, the moment when they realize, yes, this is doable. But on the way there, it's okay to screw up and see there's more than one way to solve a certain problem, more than one tactic to apply. We really like it when people can reconsider their actions, when not everything is so easy the players can go one-man army on the encounters. Keeping things exciting is a matter of diversity in the maps. It's about making what takes place on the map not appear easy or trivial. Simply put, there needs to be a constant challenge for the player. And with the 180 battle maps we implemented, that's for certain. Good thing almost everyone on the team has a history of turn-based strategy games.
Die Taktikspiele, die ich in meiner Jugend gespielt habe, das war ganz klar
The strategy games I played back in the day were definitely Battle Isle and UFO, Enemy Unknown. I actually played the recent part XCOM, of course. Those are the games that really flashed me. I worked on 2D adventures here at Dedelic, and when we developed Chains of Satinav, our first Dark Eye adventure, I was really hyped since I just recently started to develop a taste for 3D tech. Already then, I thought making a 3D game would be awesome. And right after that, we were proposed the question, maybe we want to pitch a 3D game. Could you see that happening? Can we do this at all? And thus, I was thrown into the deep end.
Und so bin ich da ins kalte Wasser geworfen worden, ja.
Ja, Nordland-Trilogie habe ich auf jeden Fall mehrfach gespielt.
Northland Trilogy. Played several times and loved every minute. Especially because it's close to the pen and paper.
Nah am Pen and Paper ist gnadenloses.
It's an unforgiving game, really. You can die of a cold. I like that.
Ansonsten in Bezug auf
In regards to Blackguards and games that left an impression, Jagged Alliance 2, really a favorite. in terms of turn-based strategy. So, we have optimal basics. However, there were many obstacles to overcome during development. What those obstacles were and which challenges are inherent to a pen and paper adaptation will be answered in part 2 of this making of. In the first part of our making of, we introduced you to the Blackguards team and the concept of turn-based strategy, RPG. This part is about how these concepts have been applied. Blackguards is based on the Dark Eye, and thus many details for the game's world are already set in stone. However, the developers found some wiggle room for artistic license.
Eine der Schwierigkeiten ergibt sich dadurch, dass die DSA...
One of the challenges was that in a world like the Dark Eye universe, there already are plenty of characters with stories written for them. The hard part is to avoid a clash with these characters and set stories. Aventuria's story is constantly expanded by hard-working writers, and so we did the following. We picked the area of the Emirate Mengbilla, the Wild South, an area that has not been played that often. It's not as restrictive and tightly written as other parts of Aventuria. That makes things deliberately easier for us to tell our story. We have more liberties to do what we want to do. However, you still have to clean up if you leave a mess in Aventuria. It's a bit like playing with Lego, having the parts all over the place. But at the end of the day, when Mom gets home, everything has to be back in the boxes again. That's important. You can't say, aliens invade Aventuria and destroy everything. You can't do that, of course. The Dark Eye, of course, demanded double tribute, rules and design.
Natürlich ist sowas zu gestalten, das ein bisschen tanzen in Ketten.
Designing something like that is a bit like dancing chained up. You have to stick to the source material. This means creatures, characters, and the world are very close to the books. The challenge to implement all this in the world was mainly in terms of design and the wiggle room we had to give ourselves. Many times, we had to be interesting, more bold than we were supposed to be. Make colors more vibrant, bolder in terms of forms, and the whole stylization. The Aventurian South gave us more creative license than we'd have with other regions, regions already featured in other games, where people got a clear idea. Ah, so that's what this region looks like. If we'd have shown our interpretation of these regions, we would have been in for some serious riot among the Dark Eye fan community. However, we're the first to feature Aventuria South in a computer game. We could really go all out on this one. Give him another spin, Anna. He looks way too relaxed. Okay, sorry.
The biggest challenge in my field was to stick to the rules as written in the books when I designed the creatures. I had to make everything a bit more interesting and unique. If you have a creature called Cayman, you want it to look like a cayman. But then again, you don't want it to at the same time.
Ich bin froh, dass wir uns bei der Grafik von Anfang an einigen.
I'm glad we all agreed on a look when it came to visuals. Everyone seemed very pleased with what we did. We always scored with the first drawing, didn't we?
Gesessen hat, oder?
Well, almost.
Can't think of any misses. I mean, we had the occasional needs more teeth, but otherwise, I think we didn't fail to deliver. The biggest challenge was certainly the rules. No pen and paper player would want to do without the rules. And implementing these rules into Blackguards and making them work was tough. We made many things more transparent for the player. This means we kept the rules, but a lot of things happen automatically, in the background, so the player doesn't have to deal with them. Of course, anyone can check on the background processes, but it's way more simple this way.
Die meisten Schwierigkeiten kamen letzten Endes auch durch
A lot of difficulties were due to the combat system. since you have to cast spells over a duration of several turns. Reloading bows and crossbows, that's something not easily implemented. On top of all that, we also had Sebastian Schmidt, who always reminded us to speed up the pace of the game. That was one of the biggest obstacles, but we found a way around that
Das war auch
eventually.
eines der größten Probleme halt, die es galt umzusetzen, aber wir haben dann
Without the rules, we wouldn't have had such a rich pool from the very beginning. We just had to make some tweaks here and there. I think if we'd have to build a rule system from scratch, it would have cost us significantly more time. And the Dark Eye itself offers some flexibility. The rules are more like a base and guidelines. I know a lot of pen and paper groups who have their own set of house rules. And what we're doing here is ultimately not so
Ja,
different.
letzten Endes machen wir das ja nicht anders. Wir haben nur unsere eigenen
We applied our own house rules. These are actually feats like steady casting, something that lets you re-roll the dice for your spell check. Just keep playing until you find a teacher, or until you can level up your spell with the experience points you gained. That usually helps.
Wir haben die Trefferwahrscheinlichkeit ziemlich stark erhöht, weil man
We adjusted the chance to hit significantly, since as a fresh Dark Eye character, you miss quite a lot. That's something we don't want a player to go through. Eventually, all skills and statistics from the pen and paper rules are woven into our combat system. We just tweaked the probabilities. There is a base chance to hit, modified by attack rating and parry rating. Or, simply put, an attack and a defense value. If we have two opponents with equal attack and parry ratings, there is a base chance of 60% to score a hit. We also removed the miss chance. You can't miss except with a natural 20.
Misserfolg bei einer 20.
Die Regelwerke sind so dick. Und man
The
kann
source
natürlich nicht
books
alles
are very thick. You can't stuff all that into a combat-focused game. The Dark Eye rules are very diverse and have a lot of social skills or crafting skills, and we don't have all of them in our game. We just could not properly transport all of them. That's why it's completely different to balance a computer game than to balance a pen and paper source book.
das Original-Balancing von dem Pen-and-Paper-Grundwerk.
Also die Hauptschwierigkeit ist, denke ich mal, immer, dass
One of the main difficulties is, I think, the social factor of a pen and paper session and the interaction between players and a game master.
dass halt auch einfach Patzer
Fumbles and botches can be great fun when playing pen and paper.
Pen and Paper Runde.
That's the main difference to a computer game.
Im Computerspiel ist es halt
Constantly missing the opponent,
der Spieler
losing your sword,
irgendwie
or eating your own spells is a lot more frustrating when you're playing alone in front of the PC.
zurückprallen. Ist es halt eher frustrierend, wenn man alleine vom Computer
These are things you have to smooth out when you create a PC adaptation.
das auf ein Computerspiel umsetzt.
Wobei es wirklich schön zu sehen ist, wenn
It's really nice to see the players start talking to the heroes.
also die Spieler selber mit den Helden auch anfangen zu
When they go like, Zerberan botched up another spell check. Come on, man. At least pretend you're a wizard.
ein bisschen an.
Additionally, every one of the Blackguards team had their personal challenge.
Es gab hunderte, tausende von Hürden.
There are hundreds of thousands of obstacles,
Erstmal reinzukommen.
because we weren't yet familiar with the tech. Fiddling your way into this, finding out how things work, getting to know the new engine, getting familiar with the new work processes, those were the difficulties in the beginning.
Nach einer Zeit, wenn man erstmal
But when you had the first results on your screen, that felt good and gave you the motivation you needed to pull through this.
Ja, wenn man eine AI entwickelt, passieren, glaube ich,
Yes, programming an AI causes all kinds of mayhem.
man versucht ja wirklich
It's really like educating little children.
Kinder
teaching them to walk and to react to stuff.
Und eben reagieren beizubringen. Dabei passieren
The craziest of situations happen during this process. One moment you think you taught them sensible enemy behavior, and suddenly they start pushing our nice interactive objects all over the place. Without any sense or reason, they move around chairs.
ohne Sinn und Zweck werden Stühle verrückt, aber es macht Spaß.
But it's fun anyway.
AIs zum
Especially when you create AIs for heroes who are high as a kite, aimlessly roaming the battle map and shooting at invisible unicorns.
Rumlaufen und auf unsichtbare
That's fun too.
Macht auch Spaß.
Meine größte Herausforderung waren an die 6
My biggest challenge were the 600 dialogues. They had to be written and scripted.
werden mussten.
There were so many dialogues that our ID system couldn't handle them anymore.
Unser ID
Since the ID system can only handle 99 dialogues per chapter, and so I had to change the ID system in the middle of the project. I usually curse and swear at the others when it comes to ID changes, but I had to do it. This was pretty complex, ate away 3 days of
3
work.
Tage Arbeit gekostet.
Die Herausforderung war natürlich in einem gesteckten
The challenge was, of course, creating something completely new to the company with a young team and within the set time frame, which wasn't that big after all. Or simply put, creating a 3D game, an RPG with strategic elements. By what means? Let's pretend we talk about animal taming. You love your animals, but sometimes you gotta get out the whip, so everything works smoothly. But ultimately, it all comes down to trust. So as long as my people trust me, we're heading in the right direction.
dann geht das auch in die richtige Richtung.
Meine Motivation, immer weiterzumachen, trotz
My motivation to always keep going despite all the complications was that we all felt we were creating something that could go really big. Something people could go crazy about
das schaffen, was wir
if we'd meet our goals.
Meine Motivation ist letztendlich genau
My motivation is exactly the same that kept me pulling all-nighters, writing pen and paper campaigns or whatever came to mind.
mag das einfach.
I just love that, and I love the game we're creating. This is just the best driving force to do something like that.
Eigentlich jeden Tag, jeden Morgen.
In fact, it's seeing Martin's eyes and Tillman's smile every morning.
Sehen zu dürfen.
Was mich am meisten dabei reizt, ist halt,
What appeals to me the most is that every project is different.
es ist immer komplett
It's probably the same genre or similar style, but every project offers unique challenges you have to face.
neue Herausforderungen, denen man sich stellen muss. Und manchmal ist es halt so,
And
dass
sometimes it makes you tear your hair, or like in my case, turns your hair gray. But it's also very enjoyable. Making games sometimes is just fun. The team pays special attention to the details. Sure, there's always an easy way out when you need a game to hit the shelves, but we're dealing with perfectionists here.
wir haben uns dafür entschieden, jede Battle Map einzeln
We decided to make every battle map unique due to a special reason. We're weird. Anyone would have gone for build something random with a nice look. We, however, thought if we go all out when creating an adventure, putting so much heart into it, we want to do it in this genre as well.
auch in dem Genre machen.
Häufig sieht man das heute bei Strategiespielen, bei
You often have strategy games or other titles that feature only little differences in their various maps.
nur Objekten
They're always built the same, only the objects are placed randomly. This was off the table in our case, since we're originally from the adventure genre. All our backdrops are hand-drawn, and failing like that against the other teams with our first 3D game was not an option. That's why we said, if the other artists can do that with adventure backgrounds, we can do it in 3D as well, in effect creating stunningly beautiful sceneries. Then we're on the right track.
haben.
Die sind so motiviert, dass die sogar, wenn man jetzt
They're so motivated that they keep the visual assets coming even if we're already done with the game.
ohne Ende und
I think that's the greatest of arts.
irgendwo einen Mittelweg zu
Finding that middle ground where you'd say, all right, we're done here, let's move on.
nächsten.
You always want to polish stuff a bit more, make everything even more beautiful. And when you're done, you want to start all over again. It's an endless process. Somebody has to stop you, or otherwise you'd keep going. That's what you got me for. That's it.
Also bei Blackguards gibt's in vielen
There are some maps in Blackguards where you take a good look and think, yes, I could get lost in this world. You could dream yourself in many of these maps. There's some brilliant atmospheric lighting, great moments, cool battles where suddenly boulders block the way and the map looks completely different compared to last turn. That's what I dig. These tactical moments the designers created.
gerade so auch die taktischen Momente, die die Game Designer dort eingebaut haben.
And finally, everyone has their own highlights in Blackguards. My favorite monster is the, well, I got two. The ghouls. They move so abstract and edgy. It's pretty disgusting. And the rock golem.
Der Steingolem.
My favorite monster is the goblin. My favorite monster at the moment is the crypt crawler. My favorite monster is the swamp ape.
My favorite monster is the cave dragon, because it's huge and fat.
Mein Lieblingsmonster.
My favorite monster is, give me a sec, there are so many. Yes, the Morpho.
Der Morpho.